Daniel Reeves was never meant to be a survivor, yet the bullet that grazed his skull only ignited his resolve, pulling him into a relentless hunt for Victor Kane, the shadowy smuggler whose limp was the only clue to a crime that gripped an entire city. Officer Daniel Reeves started his night shift expecting little more than routine patrols across the quiet industrial edges of the city. The air carried a faint chill and a low river fog that settled like smoke along the asphalt. He drove the familiar route in near silence, watching streetlights smear across his windshield. At 11:42 p.m., the calm shattered when dispatch reported a break-in at a small warehouse near the docks. The address triggered a twinge of unease, an old shipping depot long abandoned except for the occasional vagrant. Reeves flicked on his siren, the red glow bouncing off damp brick walls as he cut through empty intersections toward the riverfront. The warehouse district lay in near darkness when he arrived. Only a single bulb glowed above the loading bay door, throwing a weak cone of yellow onto slick pavement. Reeves parked with his headlights off, stepping carefully into the echoing quiet. A distant clang of metal against metal drifted from inside, sharp against the hush. He radioed his position, then reached for his flashlight, its beam slicing through the mist as he approached the entrance. The smell of machine oil hung heavy, mixed with the damp scent of river water. Every step sounded too loud, his boots clicking against the concrete as he scanned for movement. A shadow flickered along the far wall, gone as quickly as it appeared. Reeves's pulse quickened. He steadied his breathing and shifted his weight, trying to pinpoint the source. Somewhere beyond the door's edge, something scraped slow, deliberate, like a shoe dragging across gravel. He raised his light and swept it across the loading area. For an instant, he caught a glimpse of a figure, tall and lean, ducking behind a stack of crates. The outline was strange, the left leg bent at an odd angle, giving the movement a lurching quality. Before Reeves could speak into his radio, a sudden flash erupted from the darkness. A deafening crack split the night, echoing off the metal walls. Pain exploded in his skull as if the world had snapped in two. His vision blurred into streaks of red and white. He felt himself falling, the cold pavement rising to meet him. The siren of his cruiser wailed somewhere distant, muffled as though underwater. Then came silence, a heavy, consuming quiet as he slipped into unconsciousness, unaware that the bullet had missed a vital artery by less than an inch and that his fight for survival was only beginning. Daniel Reeves woke to a ceiling washed in harsh fluorescent light, the rhythmic beep of a heart monitor cutting through the haze. His head throbbed with every pulse, a dull ache that reminded him of the narrow escape. He barely understood. Doctors and nurses moved quickly around him, their faces tense but relieved. The bullet had grazed his skull, splintering bone, yet miraculously avoiding the artery that would have ended his life within seconds. Metal fragments had been removed during emergency surgery, but a thin band of stitches marked the path of destruction. He was alive, but the ringing in his ears and the fog in his thoughts told him how close he had come to death. News of the attack spread through the city before dawn. Local stations replayed aerial shots of the warehouse, their commentators speculating on motives and suspects. A decorated officer shot while responding to a call struck a chord with residents already uneasy about a recent spike in late-night thefts near the river. Strangers left flowers and cards outside the hospital, but beneath the gestures of support was a deep current of fear. If someone could ambush a trained officer and vanish without a trace, no one felt safe. Investigators combed the warehouse district as Reeves rested, but the crime scene yielded little. No fingerprints, no shell casings, no discarded clothing, only faint shoe impressions in the wet gravel near the river's edge. Detectives tested the marks but found no match in the department's database. Surveillance cameras around the shipping yards had either malfunctioned or been turned away at the critical angle, a detail that suggested deliberate tampering. The shooter had moved like a ghost, leaving only questions. While Reeves regained strength, the case became a citywide obsession. Talk shows debated whether the attack was a targeted hit or a random act. Some theorized that organized crime might be reclaiming the Docklands. Others whispered about a rogue sniper. Investigators interviewed workers, night watchmen, and residents, but every lead dissolved into dead ends. Even Reeves's memory of a tall figure with an uneven stride felt too thin to guide them. Lying in his hospital bed, Reeves replayed every second of that night. The smell of oil, the shape of the shadow, the faint scrape of a dragging foot, all of it etched itself deeper into his mind. The doctors urged patience, warning him not to rush recovery, but a quiet determination began to build. He knew the person who pulled the trigger was still out there, and he could not rest while the trail remained cold. Determined not to let the investigation fade, Daniel Reeves pushed through his recovery faster than his doctors advised. Physical therapy sessions became opportunities to rebuild his strength and sharpen his focus. Each morning he tested his balance, ignoring the dull ache along his temple, while each night he studied the case files the department had shared with him. He noted every small inconsistency, circling details others had dismissed. The faint scrape of a dragging foot replayed in his mind until it became more than a sound. It was a clue waiting to be decoded. When he was cleared for limited duty, Reeves requested patrols near the warehouse district. Colleagues worried about his insistence, but he brushed off their concerns, convinced the attacker would resurface. He revisited the scene alone after shifts ended, walking the perimeter under the same low river fog. Months of weather had washed away most evidence, yet the atmosphere still felt charged. On one such night, he noticed a narrow service path behind the warehouse that investigators had overlooked, its entrance hidden by a collapsed fence. The ground there bore faint impressions, too worn to cast, but enough to suggest recent foot traffic. Reeves expanded his search outward, canvassing nearby bridges and docks for surveillance footage from the night of the shooting. Most cameras had recorded nothing useful, but a weather-beaten security system on an old pedestrian bridge finally yielded a fragment. Grainy and partially obscured, the footage showed a figure boarding a small motorboat minutes after the attack. The person's gait was unmistakable, a pronounced limp, the left leg dragging slightly as they stepped onto the deck. The timestamp matched the moment dispatch lost contact with Reeves's radio. The discovery ignited his instincts. He recalled a string of unsolved dockside thefts from the previous year, electronics stolen from cargo ships, always near the same stretch of river. Those cases had stalled because the thieves vanished along waterways before police could intercept them. Reeves spent evenings reviewing those reports, mapping the locations and dates. A pattern emerged, each theft aligning with access points to hidden channels that wound beyond the city limits. The limp in the video mirrored witness descriptions from one of those earlier crimes, a detail long buried in the paperwork. Though still officially on light duty, Reeves began compiling his findings in a private notebook. He shared only fragments with his closest colleagues, wary of leaks that could scare off the suspect. The pieces were aligning into something larger than a single ambush. Someone with knowledge of the docks, someone who moved like a phantom, had tried to end his life, and Reeves was closing in on a name. Daniel Reeves followed the river's clues like a thread through a maze, his quiet persistence leading him deeper into the underworld that thrived beyond the city's polished skyline. Dockside records revealed a web of unregistered shipments, each tied to shell companies with false addresses. Late at night, Reeves sat at his kitchen table mapping every theft, every mysterious fire, every missing shipment. A picture formed of an organized network using the river as a secret highway. At the center of these connections emerged a single name, whispered by informants and hidden in old police reports: Victor Kane, a former dock worker known for his cunning and a permanent limp from a warehouse accident years earlier. Kane's reputation made him more myth than man. Truck drivers spoke of a figure who could slip between patrol schedules and vanish into the current before anyone reacted. Older officers recalled a botched raid years back when Kane allegedly set an entire pier ablaze to cover his escape. Yet no one had managed to place him at a crime scene since. Reeves sensed that his own shooting had been more than a random act. It was an attempt to silence the one officer closing in on the smuggling empire Kane protected. Trust became the next challenge. The smuggling ring's reach was long, and rumors of inside help spread through the department. Reeves confided only in Special Agent Laura Grant from a federal task force, someone he had worked with on a minor case years before. Together, they cross-checked shipping manifests and satellite images, discovering hidden inlets where stolen electronics could be transferred to smaller boats under cover of darkness. Each new piece of evidence hinted at a larger operation, one capable of bribing dock inspectors and disabling surveillance equipment. The risk escalated with every step. Anonymous messages began appearing in Reeves's mailbox, scraps of paper with cryptic warnings, a single bullet casing left on his porch. He photographed each item and handed them to Agent Grant, refusing to be intimidated. His own near-death experience had burned away fear, replacing it with a steady resolve. By early autumn, Their investigation uncovered a critical lead: a Riverside warehouse leased under a false name but paid for in cash by someone matching Kane's old financial records. Reeves presented the evidence to a select group of federal officers, urging swift action before the suspect vanished again. The team planned a covert operation, choosing a night when tide charts and shipping schedules offered the least cover for escape. As Reeves reviewed the tactical maps, he felt the weight of the months behind him and the dangerous hours ahead. The man who had nearly ended his life was within reach, and the final move had to be flawless. The night of the operation arrived with a cold wind sweeping off the river, carrying the scent of diesel and salt. Daniel Reeves stood among a select team of federal agents, the dark water below reflecting only thin strips of moonlight. Their target was a derelict warehouse tucked behind rusting cranes and stacks of forgotten shipping containers. From the outside, it appeared abandoned, but satellite images and hidden cameras suggested otherwise: heat signatures, faint movements, and a small motorboat moored in the shadows. Reeves tightened his vest, his pulse steady despite the memory of the gunshot that had nearly ended his life. The agents moved in silence, spreading across the perimeter while boats blocked escape routes on the water. Reeves watched through night vision binoculars as two figures emerged from the warehouse, one tall and unmistakably limping. It was Victor Kane. He carried a duffel bag and gestured to an accomplice, unaware of the tightening cordon around him. When the command to advance came, teams closed in from every direction. A sudden shout broke the stillness, followed by the crash of metal as Kane dropped the bag and bolted toward an underground service tunnel hidden by a collapsed grate. Reeves joined the pursuit, the chase echoing through narrow passages slick with river spray. Kane's limp slowed him, but he knew the layout well, weaving through twists and dead ends. The tunnel opened near a secondary dock, where a small boat waited, engine idling. Agents swarmed from both sides, cutting off the final exit. Kane reached for his waistband, but a warning light from a laser sight froze him in place. In seconds he was restrained, his defiance replaced by a cold, bitter stare. Inside the warehouse, agents uncovered crates of stolen electronics, counterfeit documents, and weapons wrapped in oilcloth. Among the evidence was a pistol, later confirmed as the weapon used in the attack on Reeves. Digital ledgers detailed years of smuggling operations and payoffs to corrupt officials. The entire network unraveled as arrests rippled across the region, dismantling a criminal enterprise that had operated unchecked for nearly a decade. When the sun rose, Reeves remained at the site, watching the first light break over the river. The bullet wound on his head still ached, a quiet reminder of how close he had come to losing everything. Yet the operation's success was undeniable. The man who tried to silence him was in custody, and a dangerous ring was finished. Against all odds, Reeves had turned a near-fatal encounter into a victory built on perseverance, proving that survival was only the beginning of justice.